She came back from her Christmas party smiling, coat still on, phone face down in her hand. But within moments, her joy turned into panic and fear. Nira Braskin stepped through our front door at 11:47 p.m., her heels clicking against the hardwood with that particular rhythm she used when she thought she'd gotten away with something. The December wind followed her inside, carrying the scent of expensive perfume and something else. Cologne that wasn't mine. I sat at the kitchen island, tablet already open, waiting. The smart home system I'd installed 2 years ago tracked everything: door sensors, motion detectors, security cameras. Every entry, every exit, every moment logged and time-stamped. Nira had loved the technology when I explained how it would protect us from burglars. She never considered what else it might protect me from. "How was the party?" I asked, not looking up from the screen. "Oh, you know how these corporate things are." She hung her coat in the closet, movements a little too careful, a little too practiced. Boring speeches, terrible wine, everyone pretending to like each other. I nodded and tapped the tablet screen. The home camera timeline appeared, synced to my account, the one she'd forgotten existed. I scrolled to 6:30 p.m. when she'd supposedly left for the Marriott downtown. The front door sensor showed her departure. Then I jumped ahead to 8:15 p.m. The cameras captured her returning home while I was at my friend Sean's place. She'd stayed exactly 43 minutes, changed clothes, and left again. The motion sensors tracked her path, straight to our bedroom, then to the bathroom, then back out. She'd showered and put on the black dress, the one she claimed was too fancy for a work party. "Funny thing about hotel security," I said, still scrolling through the footage. "The Marriott keeps pretty detailed logs of their events." Nira froze halfway to the refrigerator. "What do you mean?" I pulled up my email and showed her the guest list I'd requested from the hotel's event coordinator. Professional courtesy. One project manager to another. The Hartwell Industries Christmas party had been canceled 3 days ago due to a COVID outbreak in their executive team. There was no party, Nira. Her smile flickered like a candle in wind. I must have gotten confused about the date. The rideshare receipts tell a different story. I placed printouts on the counter between us. 2 trips to Harris McCoy's apartment complex, one at 6:45 p.m., one at 10:30 p.m. Funny how that lines up with your little wardrobe change. The color drained from her face. She reached for her phone, fingers trembling slightly. I'd been waiting for that move. "Wi-Fi's down," I said. "Maintenance issue." She tried her cellular data. I'd already contacted our carrier and suspended her line, citing suspicious activity on the account. Amazing what you can accomplish when all the utilities are in your name. Nira's breathing quickened. "Lennon, this is crazy. You're acting like some kind of stalker." "I'm acting like a husband who pays attention." I stood up, sliding a manila folder across the granite surface. "Separation agreement. I had my attorney draft it this afternoon." Her hands shook as she opened the folder. "You can't be serious." Page 3 covers misrepresentation and overnight absences. Page 7 details the asset division. Page 12 explains the timeline for your temporary relocation. Temporary relocation? Her voice cracked. "I've arranged for you to stay at the extended stay on Route 9. 2 weeks paid in advance. Your suitcases are by the front door." She stared at the papers, then at me, then back at the papers. "This is insane. You can't just throw me out based on some paranoid conspiracy theory." Harris McCoy, sales executive at Meridian Corp., divorced last year, drives a black Audi A4, lives in Unit 3B at Riverside Commons. I recited the details like a grocery list. Sean ran a background check. Nice guy, apparently. Terrible at covering his tracks. Nira's phone buzzed against the counter. A text message from a contact labeled H appeared on the lock screen. "Everything okay? You seemed worried when you left." I picked up the phone and showed her the screen. "Worried about what, exactly?" That's when the panic really set in. Her eyes darted around the kitchen like she was looking for an escape route, but there was nowhere to run. The evidence was overwhelming. the timeline airtight, the exit strategy already in motion. "Lennon, please, we can work this out. It was a mistake, a moment of weakness. The mistake was thinking I wouldn't notice." I collected the separation papers and placed them back in the folder. The weakness was assuming I'd just take it. She tried tears next, then anger, then bargaining. None of it worked. I'd spent 3 days preparing for this conversation, anticipating every excuse, every manipulation tactic, every emotional appeal. The technical evidence was irrefutable, and the legal groundwork was already laid. At 12:23 a.m., Nira Braskin walked out of our house carrying 2 suitcases and a folder full of documents that would reshape both our lives. She'd entered with a smile and a lie. She left with nothing but the truth and its consequences. I watched her taillights disappear down our quiet suburban street, then returned to the kitchen island. My tablet still showed the camera timeline, a digital record of deception and discovery. I closed the application and opened a new document, Phase 2 Planning. The Christmas party smile was just the beginning. The basement workshop had always been my sanctuary. Concrete walls, fluorescent lighting, workbenches lined with tools and technology. This was where I built our smart home system, where I repaired electronics for neighbors, where I retreated when the world above became too complicated. Now, it served a different purpose. Sean Murphy arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, carrying coffee and the expression of a man who'd seen too much during his 15 years as a police detective. He'd retired early after a corruption scandal in the department. Not his corruption, but he'd refused to stay quiet about it. These days, he ran a small private investigation business, helping people find truth in a world full of lies. "So she's really gone?" He settled into the metal folding chair across from my workstation. "Extended Stay America Route 9, paid through New Year's." I pulled up the bank records on my secondary monitor. "She tried to use our joint credit card at 2 a.m., declined. Tried again at a gas station, also declined." "You froze the accounts?" "Temporarily suspended pending review of suspicious activity. All perfectly legal when you're the primary account holder." I scrolled through the transaction history. "She's been spending money at restaurants I've never been to, shops I've never heard of, always on days when she claimed to be working late." Sean studied the printouts I'd prepared. "Harris McCoy. Clean record, decent credit, no outstanding warrants, works in pharmaceutical sales, makes good money, recently divorced, ex-wife lives in California with their kid." "What about his reputation?" "That's where it gets interesting." Sean opened his notebook. "I talked to some people in his building, few folks at his company. Guy's got a pattern. This isn't his first affair with a married woman." I leaned back in my chair, processing the information. "Serial homewrecker. Seems that way. His ex-wife filed for divorce citing adultery. Apparently he had a thing going with his boss's wife. Before that, there were rumors about him and a client's spouse." The workshop's ventilation system hummed quietly overhead. I'd installed it myself, along with the security cameras, the network infrastructure, and the climate controls. Every aspect of this space was designed and built by my hands. It felt appropriate to plan Nira's downfall in a place that represented my competence, my attention to detail, my ability to create something meaningful from raw materials. "What's your next move?" Sean asked. I pulled up a different application on my computer, a social media monitoring tool I'd originally developed to track mentions of my consulting business. Information warfare. Nira's entire identity is built on perception management. Perfect wife, successful career woman, pillar of the community. Take that away, and she's got nothing. You're talking about public humiliation. I'm talking about truth distribution. I showed him screenshots of Nira's social media profiles. "Look at this stuff. Constant posts about our perfect marriage, our beautiful home, our shared values. All lies, but her friends eat it up." Sean examined the images. Nira and me at charity events, dinner parties, weekend getaways. every photo carefully curated to project success and happiness. The comments were predictably gushing, relationship goals. You two are so perfect together. Marriage inspiration. She's built a brand around being the ideal wife, I continued. Her social status, her professional reputation, even her friendships are all connected to that image. Destroy the image, and everything else collapses. My phone buzzed with a notification. Nira was calling from an unknown number, probably borrowed someone's phone at the hotel. I let it go to voicemail, then played the message on speaker. Lennon, this is ridiculous. I'm sitting in a horrible hotel room because you've lost your mind over nothing. Call me back so we can discuss this like adults. I'm not signing those papers until we talk. Sean raised an eyebrow. She still thinks she's in control. That's about to change. I opened another application, the home automation system. Every smart device in our house was connected to this network. Thermostats, lighting, security cameras, door locks, even the garage door opener. She still has her house key, but it won't do her much good. I demonstrated by remotely changing the entry code on our front door lock. The system logged the change with a timestamp and sent a notification to my phone. Then I adjusted the security settings to send me an alert if anyone approached the property. You've turned your house into a fortress. I've turned my house into evidence collection. I pulled up the camera feeds. Every angle covered, every entry monitored, every visitor documented. If she tries to come back, I'll know about it. If she brings Harris with her, I'll have video proof. Sean finished his coffee and stood to leave. Just remember, there's a line between justice and obsession. Don't cross it. After he left, I spent the morning refining my strategy. The separation papers were just the opening move. Nira would fight back. That was her nature. She'd try to control the narrative, paint herself as the victim, maybe even attempt to turn our mutual friends against me. I needed to stay ahead of her. The first step was intelligence gathering. I created fake social media accounts and began following Nira's friends, her co-workers, her extended family. People posted everything online these days: where they went, what they thought, who they were with. It was like having a surveillance network that volunteered its own information. Next, I researched Harris McCoy more thoroughly. Social media profiles, professional networking sites, public records, even old news articles. The man was surprisingly careless with his digital footprint. Photos from expensive restaurants, vacation trips, luxury purchases, all funded by a sales job that paid well, but not that well. By noon, I had a comprehensive profile of my wife's lover. His habits, his weaknesses, his vulnerabilities. More importantly, I had a plan to exploit them. The workshop felt different now, charged with purpose. This was no longer just a place to tinker with electronics and escape from domestic routine. This was mission control for the systematic dismantling of two people who thought they could outsmart me. They were about to learn otherwise. The Millbrook Christmas Festival transformed our quiet New England town into something from a holiday postcard. Main Street sparkled with thousands of lights. Vendor booths lined the sidewalks, and families wandered between hot chocolate stands and craft displays. It was exactly the kind of community event where Nira loved to be seen, networking, and maintaining her carefully constructed public image, which made it the perfect place for her downfall. I'd spent 3 days preparing for this moment. The festival's organizing committee had hired me to manage their audiovisual setup, projector screens, sound systems, and the centerpiece, a massive LED display mounted above the main stage. As the technical coordinator, I had administrative access to all the equipment. Nira arrived at 6 p.m., fashionably late as always. She wore her red wool coat and matching scarf, the outfit she reserved for important social occasions. Harris McCoy walked beside her, trying to look casual but clearly uncomfortable in the crowd of families and local business owners. I watched them from my position near the sound booth, adjusting audio levels and monitoring the video feeds. They moved through the festival like a couple, stopping at vendor booths, sharing funnel cake, posing for photos with other attendees. Bold moves, considering half the town knew about our separation by now. "Lennon!" Brielle Hartman appeared beside me, her voice artificially sweet. She was Nira's closest friend and biggest enabler, the kind of person who thrived on drama and gossip. "I didn't expect to see you here tonight." "Community service," I replied, gesturing to the equipment around us. "Someone has to keep the technology running." "About you and Nira." She leaned closer, lowering her voice. "I hope you two can work things out. Marriage is hard, but it's worth fighting for." I almost laughed. Brielle knew about the affair, had probably known for months. But she was fishing for information, trying to gauge my emotional state and gather intelligence for Nira. "Some things aren't worth fighting for," I said. "Some things are worth ending cleanly." At 7:30, the festival's main program began. Local officials gave speeches about community spirit and holiday traditions. The high school choir performed carols. Children from the elementary school acted out a nativity scene. Standard small-town entertainment, wholesome and predictable. I waited until the crowd was fully engaged, then made my move. The festival's photo slideshow was scheduled to begin at 8 p.m., a collection of images from past events, local landmarks, and community celebrations. I'd volunteered to manage the presentation, which gave me legitimate access to the control systems. But instead of the planned slideshow, I loaded a different collection of images. Screenshots of text message conversations between Nira and Harris, photos of them entering his apartment building, receipts from romantic dinners and weekend getaways, bank records showing expenditures that coincided with her supposed work trips. The evidence appeared on the giant LED screen for exactly 37 seconds before I switched back to the regular programming. Long enough for hundreds of people to see it, short enough to claim it was a technical malfunction. The crowd's reaction was immediate and electric. Gasps, murmurs, pointing fingers. People pulled out their phones to take pictures of the screen, even though the incriminating images were already gone. The damage was done. The information was out there, spreading through the festival like wildfire. Nira stood frozen near the hot chocolate stand, her face pale in the glow of the Christmas lights. Harris grabbed her arm and tried to lead her away from the crowd, but there was nowhere to hide. Everyone was staring, whispering, taking photos. I maintained my position at the sound booth, playing the role of confused technician. "Sorry, folks. Looks like we had a data corruption issue. Let me get this sorted out." But the festival goers weren't interested in technical explanations. They were too busy discussing what they'd just witnessed. Nira Braskin, the perfect wife, caught in a very imperfect situation. "Did you see that? Was that really her? I always thought something was off about those two. Poor Lennon. He seemed like such a nice guy." The gossip spread faster than I'd anticipated. Within minutes, people were sharing photos and videos on social media. The images I'd displayed were being screenshot, cropped, and redistributed across every platform. Nira's carefully managed reputation was dissolving in real time. She tried to approach me, pushing through the crowd with Harris trailing behind her, but I was ready for that too. "Lennon, we need to talk," she said, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. "I'm working," I replied, not looking up from the control panel. "Technical difficulties require my full attention." "You know what you did." "I know what I'm doing." I finally met her eyes. "Fixing problems." Harris stepped forward, trying to assert some kind of authority. "This is harassment. We could call the police." "Please do." I gestured to the crowd around us. "I'm sure they'd be very interested in hearing your side of the story." The festival continued around us, but the atmosphere had changed. The wholesome family entertainment was now background noise to the real drama unfolding in the center of town. People pretended to watch the performers while actually watching us, waiting to see what would happen next. Nira realized she was trapped. Every attempt to control the situation only made it worse. Every word she spoke was being overheard and analyzed by dozens of people who would repeat it to dozens more. She grabbed Harris's hand and fled toward the parking area, leaving behind a trail of whispers and speculation. I watched them go, then returned my attention to the festival's audio system. The high school choir was performing Silent Night. The irony wasn't lost on me. By 9 p.m., the story had spread beyond the festival. Social media posts were being shared across the county. Local Facebook groups were buzzing with discussion. The perfect marriage of Lennon and Nira Braskin had become the town's hottest gossip topic. I packed up my equipment slowly, methodically, taking time to appreciate the efficiency of small-town information networks. In a big city, this kind of exposure might have been contained, forgotten within days. But in Millbrook, reputation was currency, and Nira had just declared bankruptcy. The Christmas festival had given me the perfect platform to distribute the truth. Now I needed to make sure it reached the right people. Phase 3 was about to begin. Harris McCoy's black Audi A4 sat in the parking lot of Romano's, the upscale Italian restaurant where he'd apparently taken Nira for what they probably thought was a discreet dinner. It was Tuesday night, 3 days after the festival incident, and they were still trying to maintain some semblance of their relationship despite the town-wide scandal. I parked 2 spaces away and waited. The restaurant was busy, which worked in my favor. Plenty of witnesses, plenty of activity, plenty of chaos to provide cover. I'd chosen Romano's specifically because it was popular with Millbrook's professional crowd, the same people who would spread whatever happened here to their networks within hours. At 8:47 p.m., they emerged from the restaurant. Nira looked exhausted, her usual polished appearance showing cracks. Harris seemed agitated, gesturing emphatically as they walked toward his car. Even from a distance, I could tell they were arguing. I waited until they reached the Audi, then got out of my truck. "Evening, Nira." "Harris." I approached casually, hands in my jacket pockets, projecting calm confidence. Harris spun around, his face flushing red. "What are you doing here?" "Public parking lot, public restaurant, just grabbing dinner." I nodded toward Romano's. "Great osso buco. You should try it sometime." "This is stalking," Nira said, her voice shaking. "I'm calling the police." "With what phone?" I reminded her. "Still having service issues?" She'd been trying to get a new phone for 3 days, but our joint account was frozen pending the separation proceedings. The cellular company required both account holders to approve major changes, and I wasn't feeling particularly cooperative. Harris stepped between us, trying to play protector. "Look, man, I know this is a difficult situation, but following us around isn't going to solve anything." "You're right," I agreed. "Following you around would be weird and inappropriate. Good thing I'm not doing that." "Then explain what you're doing here." I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo of the restaurant's exterior. "Romano's catered my company's holiday party last week. I'm picking up the leftover wine they promised to save for me. Perfectly legitimate business." It was a lie, but a plausible one. Harris couldn't prove otherwise without looking paranoid and desperate. "This is harassment," he insisted. "This is a coincidence." I pocketed my phone. "Although I have to say, you two picked an interesting spot for a romantic dinner. Half my neighbors eat here regularly. Mrs. Wolcott from down the street was at the table by the window. She loves to wave." Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Nira's face went white. Mrs. Wolcott was the neighborhood's unofficial information hub, a retired teacher who knew everyone and remembered everything. If she'd seen them together at Romano's, the entire subdivision would know by morning. "You're enjoying this," Nira accused. "I'm appreciating irony." I looked at Harris. "Tell me, how does it feel to be the other man? Is it everything you expected?" "Shut up," he snapped. "I'm genuinely curious. You had to know this would get messy eventually. Married women always come with complications. Did you think about that before you started texting my wife at midnight? Harris's hands clenched into fists. I said shut up. Or what? You'll hit me? In a crowded parking lot in front of witnesses, while you're already the subject of a town-wide scandal? I laughed. That would be spectacularly stupid, even for you. The truth was, I wanted him to take a swing at me. A public assault would give me legal ammunition and make him look even worse in the court of public opinion. But Harris wasn't quite that foolish. Instead, he turned to unlock his car, hands shaking with anger and adrenaline. That's when I noticed the key in his hand. A simple metal key, not the electronic fob that usually came with luxury vehicles. Car trouble? I asked. The remote died, Nira answered quickly. Too quickly. I walked around to the driver's side of the Audi, examining the door handle. Fresh scratches around the lock cylinder, the kind that came from forced entry or emergency locksmith work. Locked yourself out? I guessed. That's embarrassing, especially in a car this expensive. Harris finally got the door open and slid behind the wheel. Mind your own business. But as he started the engine, I noticed something else. The radio display showed an error message, and the dashboard's digital clock was flashing 12 SAU. The car's electrical system had been reset recently. I stepped back as Harris reversed out of the parking space, but not before taking a photo of his license plate with my phone. The Audi's engine made an odd grinding noise as they drove away, like something wasn't quite right with the transmission. Interesting. I walked into Romano's and approached the hostess. Excuse me, did you happen to notice any car trouble in your parking lot tonight? Someone mentioned seeing a locksmith truck earlier. The young woman nodded. Yeah, around 7:30. Some guy got locked out of his car. The locksmith had to do something with the computer system, too. Took forever. I thanked her and left, my mind already working through the implications. Harris hadn't just locked himself out of his car, he'd needed professional help to get back in, and the process had required resetting the vehicle's electronic systems. That suggested something more serious than a simple lockout. It suggested someone had deliberately interfered with his car's security system. Back in my truck, I pulled up the contact information for Jake Morrison, a locksmith who did work for my consulting clients. Jake was discreet, professional, and willing to answer hypothetical questions for the right price. Jake, it's Lennon Braskin. Quick question about automotive security systems. If someone wanted to disable a car's remote entry, how would they do it? Depends on the car, Jake replied. Newer vehicles have encrypted systems that are pretty hard to crack, but if you had physical access to the vehicle and the right tools, you could potentially interfere with the key fob's frequency or even access the car's computer through the OBD port. What would that accomplish? Lock the owner out, disable the engine, mess with the electrical systems. Basically turn their expensive car into an expensive paperweight until they call someone like me to fix it. I thanked Jake and ended the call, then sat in the parking lot for a few more minutes, thinking. Someone had sabotaged Harris's car, someone with technical knowledge and access to specialized equipment, someone who wanted to inconvenience him and force him to spend money on emergency repairs, someone exactly like me. The only problem was, I hadn't done it, which meant Harris McCoy had made another enemy, someone with skills similar to mine and a grudge worth acting on. This was getting interesting. The Millbrook Diner occupied a corner lot on Main Street, its neon sign flickering against the gray December sky. It was the kind of place where information flowed as freely as coffee, where every conversation was potential gossip and every customer was a potential source. Gina Reeves had been working the morning shift for 12 years, long enough to know everyone's secrets and smart enough to keep most of them. She was also Sean's ex-girlfriend, which made her a valuable ally in my campaign against Nira and Harris. Rough week? She asked, refilling my coffee cup without being asked. Enlightening week. I slid a $20 bill across the counter. Buy yourself lunch. Gina pocketed the money and leaned against the counter. Word is your wife's been making some interesting choices lately. Word travels fast in this town. Faster when there's video evidence. She glanced around the diner, confirming we weren't being overheard. That festival thing was brutal. Half the town saw it, the other half heard about it. What are people saying? Depends who you ask. The church ladies are scandalized. The divorced women think she's an idiot for getting caught. The men mostly feel sorry for you. I sipped my coffee, processing the social dynamics. And Harris? Nobody knows him well enough to have strong opinions. But his reputation's taking a beating by association. Gina wiped down the counter with practiced efficiency. Although there's been some interesting developments on that front. Such as, his ex-wife called the diner yesterday looking for information about him. Apparently she's considering a custody modification, wants to prove he's an unfit father. That was unexpected. What did you tell her? Nothing specific, but I may have mentioned that he's been involved in some local drama lately. Gina's smile was predatory. She seemed very interested in learning more. I made a mental note to research Harris's custody situation. An ex-wife with legal motivation could be a powerful ally, especially if she had access to financial records and communication logs. There's something else, Gina continued. That car trouble he had at Romano's? It wasn't the first time. What do you mean? My cousin works at the Toyota dealership on Route 9. Says a guy matching Harris's description brought in an Audi last week, claiming someone had vandalized it, scratched paint, slashed tires, that kind of thing. The pieces were starting to form a pattern. Did he file a police report? That's the interesting part. He didn't want to involve the cops, paid cash for the repairs and asked them to keep it quiet. Someone was systematically harassing Harris McCoy, and it wasn't me. That suggested he'd made enemies beyond just the husband of his current affair partner. It also suggested those enemies were escalating their tactics. I finished my coffee and left the diner, my mind already working through the implications. If Harris was dealing with multiple threats, it would be easier to hide my own activities in the chaos. More importantly, it might provide opportunities to amplify the pressure he was already under. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. We need to talk. Meet me at the library in 1 hour. Come alone. N. Nira was getting desperate. The Millbrook Public Library was neutral territory, a place where confrontation was discouraged and privacy was limited. She'd chosen it strategically, hoping the public setting would force me to be reasonable and civil. She was wrong. I arrived early and positioned myself at a table near the back, laptop open, projecting the image of someone working on legitimate business. The cafe was already humming with low conversation and the hiss of steaming milk, a place busy enough to feel anonymous but quiet enough to hear every word spoken at the table. I chose my seat carefully, back to the wall, clear view of the entrance, my screen angled just right so it looked convincingly dense with charts and text. I even typed a few lines, just for show, settling into the role. When Nira entered, she looked around nervously before approaching my table. Her eyes swept the room in quick, darting motions, shoulders tight, steps hesitant, as if she expected someone to call her name or block her path. When she finally spotted me, relief flickered across her face, followed almost immediately by tension. "Thank you for coming," she said, sitting across from me. She placed her purse in her lap instead of on the chair beside her, fingers gripping the strap like an anchor. "I was here anyway. Research project." I didn't look up right away, letting the moment stretch, the soft clatter of dishes filling the space between us. "Lennon, this has to stop. The festival thing, following us around, freezing the accounts. It's gone too far." Her voice was low but urgent, words tumbling over each other as if rehearsed and now finally unleashed. I looked up from my laptop screen. What's gone too far is adultery. Everything else is just consequences. I met her eyes and held them, watching her flinch at the word. I made a mistake, I admit that. But destroying my life isn't going to fix our marriage. She spread her hands slightly, a gesture meant to signal reason, compromise. Our marriage was destroyed the moment you started texting Harris McCoy at midnight. I'm just cleaning up the wreckage. The sentence came out evenly, without heat, which seemed to unsettle her more than anger would have. Nira leaned forward, lowering her voice. What do you want? Money? The house? I'll give you whatever you need to make this stop. Her eyes searched my face, trying to read it, trying to find a price. I want the truth, all of it. How long it's been going on, how many people knew, what you told them about me. I closed the laptop halfway, signaling that this, not whatever was on the screen, was the real business. It started in October. Harris and I met at a conference. We had drinks. One thing led to another. She paused, choosing her words carefully. Nobody knew except Brielle, and I only told her because I needed someone to talk to. Each phrase sounded selected, weighed, polished for maximum sympathy. Brielle knew for months and said nothing to me. I let that sit there, heavy and unresolved. I asked her not to. I was trying to figure out what I wanted. Her gaze dropped to the table, tracing the wood grain. And what did you decide you wanted? I asked it calmly, almost gently. Nira hesitated. I thought I wanted excitement, something different. Harris made me feel young again, attractive, desired. She swallowed, as if the admission cost her something. And now? I didn't fill the silence for her. Now I realize what I've lost. You, our home, our life together. My reputation, my friendships, my standing in the community. Her voice wavered, just enough to sound practiced, regret stacked neatly like items on a list. I studied her face, looking for signs of genuine remorse. What I saw instead was calculation. She was trying to gauge my emotional state, looking for leverage or weakness. The micro-expressions gave her away. The quick glances, the subtle adjustments, the careful timing of each sigh. There's something you should know about Harris, I said. I watched her tense before she even responded. What? The word came out sharp, defensive. He's done this before, multiple times. You're not special, Nira. You're just convenient. I kept my voice steady, factual. Her face flushed. That's not true. She said it too quickly, as if trying to outrun the idea. I turned my laptop around, showing her the research I'd compiled. Social media posts, public records, news articles. A pattern of relationships with married women, each one ending in scandal and divorce. The screen glowed between us, an unarguable ledger of names and dates. Rebecca Martinez, 2019. Divorced after her husband found text messages. Jennifer Walsh, 2020. Lost custody of her kids when her affair became public. Amanda Chen, 2021. Fired from her job when the relationship created conflicts of interest. I didn't embellish. The facts were damning enough. Nira stared at the screen, her face growing pale. The color drained slowly, like water receding from a shoreline. You're not his first married woman, and you won't be his last. He has a type. Successful, married, vulnerable. He targets women who are looking for validation, then discards them when the situation becomes complicated. I spoke quietly now, almost clinically. You're lying. But her voice lacked conviction. Check his social media. Look at the patterns. He's already laying the groundwork to distance himself from you. I showed her Harris's recent posts. Subtle but telling changes in his online behavior. Fewer photos with Nira, more emphasis on his professional achievements, strategic mentions of being focused on personal growth. He's preparing his exit strategy, I explained. When the scandal becomes too much to handle, he'll portray himself as the victim of an obsessed married woman. You'll be left holding all the blame. Nira's hands trembled as she processed the information. Even if that's true, it doesn't justify what you're doing. What I'm doing is protecting myself and ensuring the truth comes out. Harris McCoy is a predator, and you enabled him by lying to everyone about our marriage. I never said anything bad about you. You didn't have to. Every lie you told about working late, every fake conference, every canceled plan, all of it painted me as the boring husband who didn't pay enough attention to his wife. I closed the laptop and stood to leave. The separation agreement stands. Sign it, or we go to court, and everything becomes public record. As I walked away, I heard her whisper, "Lennon, please." But I didn't look back. The library meeting had served its purpose, not to reconcile, but to plant seeds of doubt about Harris's intentions. Let her wonder if she'd been manipulated by a serial predator. Let her question whether their relationship was real or just another conquest. The truth was, I didn't care about Harris's romantic history, but Nira didn't need to know that. Phase 4 was about to begin. Meridian Pharmaceuticals occupied 3 floors of a glass office building on the outskirts of town, the kind of sterile corporate environment where ambition and politics mattered more than actual work. I'd never been inside before, but I'd researched the company thoroughly as part of my investigation into Harris McCoy's background. What I'd discovered was interesting. Meridian was in the middle of a major reorganization, cutting costs and eliminating redundant positions. Sales representatives like Harris were under intense pressure to maintain their numbers or risk being laid off. That pressure made people vulnerable, and vulnerable people made mistakes. I parked in the visitor section and walked into the lobby, carrying a leather portfolio and wearing my best consulting attire. The receptionist, a young woman with perfectly styled hair and a practiced smile, looked up expectantly. "Lennon Braskin, here to see Eli Patterson about the automation project." She checked her computer screen, frowning slightly. "I don't see an appointment scheduled." Mr. Patterson requested a preliminary assessment of their current systems. "I'm running ahead of schedule. Thought I'd stop by to introduce myself." I handed her a business card. "If he's not available, I can wait or reschedule." The receptionist studied the card. Legitimate contact information for my consulting business, professionally designed, completely authentic. "Let me call his office." While she made the call, I surveyed the lobby. Corporate awards on the walls, employee photos, mission statements about innovation and customer service. Standard corporate theater, designed to impress visitors and reassure employees that they worked for a successful company. "Mr. Patterson can see you now," the receptionist said. "Third floor, corner office." Eli Patterson was exactly what I'd expected. Mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of confident handshake that came from years of closing deals and managing people. His office overlooked the parking lot, with a clear view of Harris McCoy's black Audi. "Mr. Braskin, good to meet you. I have to admit, I'm not sure what automation project you're referring to." "Industrial espionage prevention," I said, settling into the chair across from his desk. "Your company handles sensitive pharmaceutical data, correct? Research findings, clinical trial results, competitive intelligence?" "Of course, but our IT security is handled internally." "Internal security is fine for external threats. I specialize in internal threats. Employees who might be sharing confidential information with competitors or personal contacts." Patterson's expression shifted slightly. "Do you have reason to believe we have that kind of problem?" I opened my portfolio and removed a folder. "I've been retained by a client to investigate potential corporate espionage in the pharmaceutical industry. During my research, I identified some concerning patterns involving your company." The folder contained printouts of Harris's social media activity, credit card records I'd obtained through questionable means, and communication logs that showed suspicious patterns of activity. "Harris McCoy, one of your sales representatives, has been in contact with employees at 3 competing firms over the past 6 months. He's also been spending money well beyond his documented income level." Patterson examined the documents, his corporate poker face slipping slightly. "Where did you get this information?" "Public records, social media analysis, financial pattern recognition, all perfectly legal investigative techniques. I leaned forward. The question is, what is Mr. McCoy sharing with these contacts, and what is he receiving in return? These could be innocent networking activities. They could be, but the timing is suspicious. Each contact occurred within days of major company announcements or product launches. Either Mr. McCoy has incredibly bad timing, or he's sharing information he shouldn't be sharing. I pulled out another document, a timeline showing Harris's communications with outside contacts correlated with Meridian's confidential business activities. October 15th, Mr. McCoy has dinner with a Pfizer representative. October 18th, Meridian announces delays in your diabetes medication trials. November 3rd, he meets with someone from Johnson & Johnson. November 7th, your stock price drops after rumors about manufacturing problems. Patterson studied the timeline, his expression growing more serious. This is circumstantial. Circumstantial evidence becomes compelling when there's enough of it. I handed him another document. Mr. McCoy's recent personal activities suggest he's under financial pressure. Expensive dinners, luxury purchases, payments to high-end hotels. Where is that money coming from? His salary and commission structure are confidential. His tax records aren't. Public information shows he reported $78,000 in income last year. His spending patterns suggest closer to $120,000 in disposable income. That was a lie. I didn't have access to Harris's tax records, but Patterson didn't know that, and the financial discrepancy was plausible enough to be concerning. What exactly are you proposing? Patterson asked. A comprehensive audit of Mr. McCoy's activities, email logs, phone records, client interactions, expense reports. If he's clean, you'll have documentation to prove it. If he's not, we'll have grounds for termination and possible criminal charges. I nodded. Corporate espionage is a federal crime. The penalties are severe, especially in the pharmaceutical industry where patient safety is involved. Patterson was quiet for a long moment, weighing his options. Harris McCoy was probably a decent sales representative, but he wasn't irreplaceable. And in the current corporate climate, even the appearance of impropriety could be damaging. I'll need to discuss this with our legal team, he said finally. Of course. But I'd recommend acting quickly. If Mr. McCoy suspects he's under investigation, he might destroy evidence or accelerate his activities. I left my contact information and walked back to the parking lot, satisfied with the meeting's outcome. I hadn't provided any concrete evidence of wrongdoing, because none existed, but I'd planted enough doubt to trigger an internal investigation. Corporate paranoia would do the rest. Within days, Harris would find himself under scrutiny from his own company. His communications would be monitored, his activities questioned, his job security threatened. The stress would affect his relationship with Nira, his financial stability, and his overall quality of life. All perfectly legal, completely deniable, and absolutely devastating. As I drove away from Meridian Pharmaceuticals, my phone rang. Sean's number appeared on the display. Interesting development, he said without preamble. Harris McCoy just called 3 different employment attorneys. Sounds like he's expecting trouble at work. Fast news travels even faster than gossip, I replied. What did you do? I shared some concerns about corporate security with the appropriate personnel. Very civic-minded of me. Sean chuckled. You're playing a dangerous game, Lennon. These people aren't going to just roll over and take it. They don't have a choice. The truth has momentum now. All I have to do is stay out of its way. But even as I said it, I knew Sean was right. Nira and Harris wouldn't accept defeat passively. They'd fight back, probably in ways I hadn't anticipated. I needed to be ready for whatever came next. The break-in attempt happened at 3:17 a.m. on a Thursday morning, exactly 1 week after my meeting with Eli Patterson at Meridian Pharmaceuticals. The motion sensors triggered first, followed by the door alarms, then the security cameras automatically began recording. I watched it all unfold from my bedroom monitor. Two figures approached my house from the backyard, moving carefully through the shadows cast by the outdoor lighting. They wore dark clothing and moved with the awkward caution of amateurs trying to look professional. One was clearly Harris. His height and build were distinctive even in the low-light footage. The other was smaller, probably Nira, though the image quality made positive identification difficult. They tried the back door first, testing the handle and examining the lock mechanism. When that failed, they moved to the basement windows, looking for easier entry points. What they didn't realize was that every access point was monitored, every approach was recorded, and every step they took was being documented in high definition. I could have confronted them immediately, called the police, or triggered the house's alarm system. Instead, I watched and waited, curious to see how far they would go. Harris produced a small pry bar and began working on one of the basement window frames. The window was reinforced, and the frame was secured with tamper-evident screws, but he didn't know that. He spent 15 minutes struggling with the mechanism before giving up in frustration. They moved around to the front of the house, staying low and avoiding the streetlights. Nira kept watch while Harris examined the front door lock. He seemed to have some basic knowledge of lockpicking, probably learned from online tutorials, but the smart lock system was beyond his capabilities. At 3:34 a.m., they retreated to their car, a rental sedan parked 2 blocks away, and drove off. The entire incident was captured from multiple angles, with clear footage of their faces and license plate. I downloaded the video files and burned them to multiple storage devices, then sent copies to my attorney and Sean. Evidence of attempted breaking and entering, criminal trespass, and conspiracy. More than enough to file charges if I chose to. But criminal charges would end the game too quickly. I had better plans for this footage. The next morning, I visited the Millbrook Police Department and filed a report with Detective Maria Santos, a 20-year veteran who handled property crimes. I brought printed screenshots from the security footage, along with a detailed timeline of the incident. "You have excellent video quality," Detective Santos observed, studying the images. "Most home security systems don't capture this level of detail." "I work in technology consulting. Security is part of my business." "Do you want to press charges?" "I want the incident documented. My wife and I are going through a divorce and her behavior has been escalating. This might not be the last time something like this happens." Detective Santos made notes in her report. "Have there been other incidents?" "Harassment, following, intimidation. Nothing I could prove before now." "We'll investigate this thoroughly. Breaking and entering is a serious charge, especially when it involves domestic disputes." I thanked her and left the police station, knowing the investigation would take several days to complete. That gave me time to implement the next phase of my plan. The video footage went online that evening. I uploaded edited versions to multiple platforms: YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. The clips showed clear images of Harris and Nira attempting to break into my house, with timestamps and location data embedded in the metadata. I tagged the posts with local hashtags and shared them to community groups and neighborhood watch pages. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within hours, the videos had been viewed thousands of times and shared across dozens of local social media accounts. Comments ranged from supportive to outraged to darkly humorous. "This is what cheaters do when they get caught. Call the police. This is criminal behavior. Poor guy can't even feel safe in his own home. She seemed so nice at the PTA meetings. Harris McCoy is a creep and everyone should know it." Local news outlets picked up the story by the next morning. Channel 8's crime reporter contacted me for an interview, which I declined, citing the ongoing police investigation. But the story ran anyway, featuring the security footage and interviews with neighbors who expressed shock and support. The coverage was devastating for both Nira and Harris. Their faces were broadcast across the region, their names were mentioned in connection with criminal activity, and their reputations were permanently damaged. Nira called me from the extended stay hotel, her voice shaking with rage and desperation. You have to take those videos down, she demanded. This is destroying my career, my life, everything. I documented a crime and reported it to the appropriate authorities, I replied. The footage is evidence of your criminal behavior. We weren't going to steal anything. We just wanted to get some of my belongings. You could have called and arranged a supervised visit. Instead, you chose to commit breaking and entering. Lennon, please, I'm begging you. Take down the videos and I'll sign the separation agreement. I'll give you whatever you want. I want you to face the consequences of your choices. My boss saw the news report. I'm suspended pending an internal investigation. Harris might lose his job. This is ruining both our lives. Good. The line went quiet for a long moment. When Nira spoke again, her voice was different, colder, more calculated. You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you've won. I think I've documented the truth. The truth is that you're a vindictive, obsessive stalker who can't accept that his marriage is over, and I'm going to make sure everyone knows it. She hung up before I could respond. I sat in my kitchen, looking out at the backyard where they'd attempted their break-in. The motion sensor lights were still working perfectly, the cameras were still recording, and the security system was still protecting my home. But Nira's threat worried me. She was desperate now, backed into a corner with nothing left to lose. Desperate people made dangerous choices. I needed to be ready for whatever she planned next. The war was escalating, and the next battle would determine who emerged victorious. The Millbrook Community Center buzzed with activity on the second Saturday of December, transformed into the venue for the annual holiday charity auction. Local businesses donated items and services, families bid on vacation packages and gift certificates, and the proceeds supported the town's food bank and homeless shelter. It was exactly the kind of high-profile community event where Nira would normally shine, networking with influential residents and projecting her image as a caring, successful professional. This year, however, her attendance was complicated by recent events. I arrived early to set up the audiovisual equipment for the auction presentation. As the event's technical coordinator, I had legitimate access to all the systems: microphones, projectors, lighting controls, and the wireless network that connected everything together. The crowd began gathering at 6 p.m., a mix of local business owners, town officials, and families looking for holiday entertainment. I recognized most of the faces. Millbrook was small enough that everyone knew everyone, at least by reputation. Nira entered at 6:30, alone and visibly nervous. She'd dressed carefully for the occasion, trying to project confidence and normalcy, but the strain showed in her posture and expression. People noticed her arrival, whispering among themselves and pointing discreetly. Harris was notably absent. According to Gina's intelligence network, he'd been placed on administrative leave from Meridian Pharmaceuticals pending the completion of their internal investigation. The stress had apparently affected his relationship with Nira, leading to arguments and recriminations. The auction began with remarks from Mayor Davidson, followed by presentations from the charity recipients. Local business owners took turns describing their donated items, encouraging competitive bidding for worthy causes. I managed the technical aspects from my position near the back of the room, adjusting audio levels and coordinating the slide presentations. But I was also watching Nira, waiting for the right moment to implement my final strategy. At 7:45, during a brief intermission, she approached my station. "We need to talk," she said, her voice tight with controlled emotion. "I'm working. After this is over, there are things you need to know." "Such as?" "Harris isn't who you think he is. Neither am I." She paused, glancing around to make sure we weren't being overheard. "Meet me at Romano's after the auction. Come alone." Before I could respond, she walked away, leaving me to wonder what new manipulation she was planning. The auction resumed with high-ticket items, vacation packages, jewelry, electronics. The bidding was spirited, with friendly competition between families and businesses. The atmosphere was festive and charitable, exactly what the organizers had hoped for. At 8:30, I made my move. The auction's presentation system was connected to the building's wireless network, which I'd helped design and install 6 months earlier. As the network administrator, I had access to all connected devices, including smartphones and tablets belonging to event attendees. I activated a program I'd written specifically for this moment, a script that scanned for devices belonging to Nira and Harris, accessed their stored communications, and prepared to broadcast selected messages on the main presentation screen. The technology was sophisticated but not illegal. The community center's network agreement, which all users accepted when connecting, included broad terms allowing administrative access for security and maintenance purposes. At 8:45, during the bidding for a weekend getaway package, I executed the program. Text messages appeared on the main screen, replacing the auction slide presentation. Conversations between Nira and Harris from the past week, discussing their legal strategies and their plans to discredit me. We need to make Lennon look unstable. I can get character witnesses to say he was controlling. The break-in was your stupid idea. Just stick to the story. He's been stalking us. The crowd's reaction was immediate and intense. Gasps, murmurs, then complete silence as people read the messages. The auction stopped mid-bid as everyone focused on the screen. More messages appeared, revealing the depth of their conspiracy. My lawyer says we can claim emotional distress. The security videos make us look bad, but we can spin it. He's obsessed with revenge, that's our angle. I never loved him anyway, this just makes it easier. That last message hit the room like a physical blow. Nira stood frozen near the front, her face pale with shock and horror. She looked around desperately, seeking an escape route, but hundreds of eyes were focused on her. The messages continued for exactly 90 seconds before I restored the normal presentation. But the damage was complete. The entire room had witnessed Nira's deception, her manipulation, and her complete lack of remorse for the affair. Mayor Davidson tried to restore order, but the crowd was too agitated. People were taking photos of the screen with their phones, sharing screenshots on social media, discussing what they'd witnessed. Nira fled the building, pushing through the crowd and ignoring the questions shouted after her. The auction continued, but the festive atmosphere was gone, replaced by gossip and speculation. I packed up my equipment methodically, professionally, as if nothing unusual had happened. Several people approached to offer support or ask questions, but I deflected them politely, maintaining my role as the neutral technical coordinator. By 10 p.m., the story was spreading across every social media platform and local news outlet. The text messages were being shared, analyzed, and discussed throughout the region. Nira's reputation was completely destroyed, her credibility eliminated, her social standing obliterated. I drove home through the quiet streets of Millbrook, past the houses where my neighbors lived, past the businesses where I'd worked, past the places where Nira and I had built our life together. The house felt different when I entered, larger, quieter, more mine than ours. I poured a drink and sat in the kitchen, looking out at the backyard where motion sensor lights stood ready to detect any unwelcome visitors. My phone buzzed with messages from friends, neighbors, and colleagues, words of support, expressions of shock, offers of help. The community had chosen sides, and they'd chosen mine. At midnight, Nira called one final time. "I hope you're satisfied," she said, her voice hollow with defeat. "I'm satisfied that the truth came out. The truth is that you destroyed 2 people's lives because your ego couldn't handle being left. The truth is that you destroyed your own life by making terrible choices and trying to blame everyone else for the consequences. I'm leaving town, tonight. Harris is already gone, drove to his brother's place in Vermont. You won. I didn't win anything. I just refused to lose everything." The line went quiet for a moment. When she spoke again, her voice was barely a whisper. "I did love you once, before everything went wrong." "I know," I said. "That's what made this necessary." She hung up, and I knew it was the last time we'd speak. I finished my drink and walked through the house, checking locks and security systems, ensuring everything was secure. Tomorrow would bring new challenges: divorce proceedings, property settlements, the practical business of untangling a shared life. But tonight, in my reclaimed home, surrounded by the technology I'd built and the truth I'd defended, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. The Christmas party smile was gone forever, replaced by the consequences of deception and the weight of truth. Nira Braskin had learned that actions have prices, and some debts can only be paid in full. The game was over, justice had been served, and I was finally free.